Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of MMO Weekly presented by Chitty Cheesesteaks. I am your host and contributor to Metsmerize, John Luke Shapiro here, and I am joined by my fellow contributors to the website, Mathias Altman-Kurosaki and Christian the Black. Gentlemen, how are you doing on this very boring Monday night?
And boring's the word I use on an off day.
Yeah, I agree.
I'm so used to watching every single day. So when you get the weird off day, it's try to find the other games to watch while you're, waiting for the Mets to come back the next day.
Yeah, I mean, we had 10 straight days with a game, and after a stretch, I think we had 4 straight Thursdays off in May. And now, we're back at it. We have a Monday off, and then the 6-game homestand starts up. So, just chilling today before the homestand starts.
Right. It is definitely odd for sure. And it's also odd that we're not going to watch any more incredibly late night baseball until not too much longer after this, but I think we're all pretty good on not staying up until
I'm
1
fine
a.m.
with that.
to watch I'm okay with that. Yeah, but speaking of that, so obviously, as you know, the Mets went to Los Angeles and they also went on their trip to Colorado, and it probably went about as good as it possibly could. They split in Los Angeles, had some really good performances in LA, and then they just absolutely dismantled the Colorado Rockies in Colorado, which is honestly what they should have done. They went 5-2 on the road trip, and there were, but a pretty couple of standout performances. Definitely point out guys like Paul Blackburn, Tyler McGill pitched pretty well. Griffin Canning had a pretty good rebound game in Los Angeles. And then you go to Colorado, Ronnie Mauricio, who was struggling throughout the Los Angeles series, did reasonably well, had a couple of big hits in Colorado. Jeff McNeil, Juan Soto, and Pete Alonso as well. So there, a lot of good performances on a trip that many people didn't think that they would really do as well as they thought they would. So I'll start with you, Matthias. Just overall, your thoughts on the road trip, some of the performances that stood out to you, and just kind of an overall feeling of kind of the vibe of the team after that trip.
Yeah, they really took care of business. That's my biggest takeaway. And thing is, they went 5-2, and those 2 losses could have easily been wins. Those were games they kind of let get away. And you can look back at that and shake your head and all that, but I mean, they won 4 of 7 overall against the Dodgers, who are still the overwhelming favorite to repeat. And then, they won all 6 games against the Rockies, which I understand the Rockies have the worst record in baseball by a wide margin, but that doesn't mean they're going to just lie down and take it. I mean, the Mets in general struggle at Coors Field. And coming into this series, they were 44-60 all time at Coors, and they won all 3 games convincingly. And the offense scored at least 5 runs in 5 of the 7 games on this road trip. So, Alonso was excellent the entire road trip. He's really been great all month. Soto got on base 6 times in the series finale. That was huge. Ronnie Mauricio, I really like the way he adjusted. And also Jeff McNeil, a huge weekend in Colorado. So the offense was great, and the pitching staff just keeps doing what they're doing. I mean, Paul Blackburn stepping up on Monday. Griffin Canning, like you said, great bounce back outing. David Peterson gave them 7 innings. Heck, even Tyler McGill was able to get through 6 innings on the day. He gave up 4 runs in the first. So really, overall, the vibes are really high around this team.
Yeah, I think taking the season series over the Dodgers was the really big thing coming out of that series. Obviously, as you mentioned, they could have won those 2 games. They lost. The second game of that series, Brazoban comes in the 9th. Was definitely tired after the night before. Max Muncy, who's been hitting the ball well lately, just takes advantage of a pitch in the zone. The series finale in the Dodgers series definitely was a tough one to swallow. But again, you go 5-2 on the road trip. You really can't complain with that. And again, this team is rolling, so it's a really good vibe right now. Just given what they had, they had a small blip last month, but they've really picked it up again. I think the big win, besides the couple in LA, was the gut check on Friday. Lindor coming in off the bench with a broken pinky toe, and on a night where the offense really wasn't clicking, they had opportunities to score and really didn't capitalize. Remember that inning where they had the bases loaded, and I think it was 3 strikeouts in a row. Lindor just, showing the leadership and the captain tag, as we call him. Again, he just does it time and time again. He finds a way to, score some runs in that game. Ultimately, they win that game. So I think if we're looking at, guys to mention, in addition to the ones Mathias mentioned, I think Lindor just having a huge moment like he's had so many times in a Mets uniform on that Friday night win against the Rockies.
Right. And, mentioning Lindor, it's crazy how, you touch on the offense being sort of, dead because, when Beatty, Mauricio, and Alvarez go down 1, 2, 3, it becomes a bit deflating. And then when you have that veteran presence in Lindor coming in and saying, you know what, guys, I got this. This is okay. Coming in hobbled on a broken foot, on a broken pinky toe that he sustained against Tony Gonsolin in Los Angeles. And now the fact that he's still playing is a miracle in its own right. These ball players are built differently. This is why I'm not in the major leagues. I played baseball. Injuries were not good for me at all. I could not play through them. These guys are absolute warriors, and it's really nice to see them actually, kind of getting that gut check and really pushing through. But you guys mentioned a couple names, and I guess we can just touch on a little bit of them here. So first, I want to mention Pete Alonso. So obviously, Pete Alonso hitting home runs left and right like he's getting paid to do. But he was phenomenal in the LA trip, hit a bunch of clutch home runs in Los Angeles. And then obviously in Colorado, he not only tied David Wright's record, but also surpassed it by hitting his 243rd home run to put him second all time on the Mets home run list. So, Christian, I'll start with you. Just kind of go through not only Pete Alonso's impact on this team so far and how, kind of messed up things would be if we didn't have him, but I guess just also his influence on the team and, ultimately what this could mean for the Mets and him going forward, not only for this season, but also, maybe the next couple seasons as well.
He is. I think this is the best he's looked in a Mets uniform. I can go back and remember 2019 and just think about all the different huge home runs he hit that season. But this version of him just seems a lot more polished. I think his plate discipline has been fantastic this season. Minus I think a couple weeks earlier on where he was maybe being a little more aggressive, swinging at breaking balls out of the zone, chasing a bit. His plate coverage has been a huge reason why he's causing all this damage at the plate. In terms of his impact, I mean, the power numbers speak for themselves. It feels like he's going to have his best offensive season ever, even including 2019. Where the Mets would be without him, I don't want to think about because he has done so many different things for this team. It's not just the home runs, although they do grab the headlines. There are plenty of times where he's been able to go the other way, slap a double into the gap. It's really pleasant to watch because it's not just a home run or nothing for him. He is showing that he has the ability to hit to all fields. So he is making himself more and more money with each game. It's going to be interesting to see how he gets handled next offseason because he's not going to just get 2 years, likely. It's going to be a much different contract in terms of length and AAV. So it's great for him. It's great for the Mets. And I cannot imagine what they'd be like without him in the middle of that order.
Yeah, and really the biggest difference between this year and last year is what he's doing with men on base. Last year, he only hit 215 with men on base, and he only hit 14 of his 34 home runs with men on base. So this year he's batting 328 with an OPS over 1100 with men on base, and 12 of his 17 home runs have been with men on. That's just, that's remarkable considering all of his struggles last year. And really, I think that home run against Devin Williams fixed him, basically. Before that, it was always he's coming out with men on base, he's chasing at pitches in the dirt, same at bat over and over again. This year, it's just the exact opposite. He's even when he's making outs, he's working deep counts, fouling pitches off, making these pitchers earn those outs, and that can affect how your team does the rest of the game. You really tire out an arm, then maybe they make a couple mistakes to the next batters, and he's really really just electrified this offense. Yeah, everyone's wondering, like, what's it going to be like with Juan Soto batting in front of someone that isn't Aaron Judge? I mean, the offense has been fantastic. I always thought that once Soto came over, Alonso was going to improve. And yeah, this week was no exception. 12 for 30 with 5 homers and 15 RBIs. He's leading the majors with 61 RBIs right now. I mean, he's, I think he can I think he can pass Strawberry within the next couple weeks, honestly. So I can't say enough good things about him right now. And honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if he breaks the franchise RBI record too, that he has. So I really, really hope that, they find a way to keep him in New York. This is a year where he will almost certainly opt out. And like Christian said, I highly doubt he's taking another 1 or 2 year deal. We're probably looking at a 3, 4, 5 year deal, which he's earned so far. So, I mean, I'm really, really happy for him, and I'm happy for the team.
Right. No, absolutely. Same here. Obviously, he's definitely improved as a player. To your point, Christian, he's not just hitting home runs. I mean, he had that 2-run double over the weekend that put the Mets up in the game that Lindor ended up winning. That put the Mets ahead. He's doing. And also his glove at first base has significantly improved. Yeah, he's had a couple of hiccups here and there, but we're not expecting Freddie
The throws.
glove
Yeah.
here. Right.
Yeah.
But at the same time, though, he's learned from those experiences and has corrected himself in that aspect. And then obviously you touch on the Devin Williams home run, Mathias. And I think the thing about that moment, and if anyone who is watching this, or if you guys were there at the watch party when he hit that home run, you can definitely feel this sort of visceral change in how things felt. Because for the whole season, like you said, Mathias, he's chasing pitches, very undisciplined approach at the plate. The season that he's having right now should have been the season he had last year, being it was a contract year. So now that he finally had to go to the ringer, not every player is built the same, so they can't just go and on a lock do that and just have a good season like that. Some players have different struggles, different methods of how they do things. And I think the Williams home run really kind of changed course, because then even throughout the postseason, you really began to see this change in approach on how he would look at pitches. Because, in particular, I'll remember for some reason this sticks out to me, when the Mets were in Pittsburgh last year, when I went to go see them, he was, chasing at everything for the most part, and that kind of seemed to be the theme for most of the season last year. Every time I went to go see him at Citi Field, he was chasing at pitches way out of the zone, trying too much. You can see that it weighed on him. So it's really nice to finally see Pete kind of, get back to that level. And then, one more thing is, you mentioned 2019, if there's one thing we could thank Brody Van Wagenen for, is not dropping him in AAA for those extra couple of months to get his service time, manipulated. Because that season, to me, I can recall so much of it because he was the centerpiece of that team, at least in terms of just kind of the focus on what that team was at the time. And I'll, never forget, being at the game before he ended up breaking the record. And I'm thinking, well, gosh, this is great. I hadn't seen something like this since Beltran and Todd Hundley, for goodness sake. So, but to your point, though, is he looks more, I don't want to say aggressive, but he just looks more sure of himself at the plate, which allows him to be a better hitter average wise. Because the big discussion for Alonso in the offseason was, yeah, he's got the power, but can he hit for average? He gets compared to Judge all the time, which I don't think is a fair comparison. But at the same time, he's probably putting numbers on par to what Judge can do average wise. And I think that goes a really long way. And then you obviously mentioned Juan Soto, of course. If there's ever going to be a Mets podcast that we do, Juan Soto seems to get mentioned every single time. Juan Soto had himself a heck of a road trip, especially in Colorado, especially on the final game on Sunday, where he got on base 6 times and went 3 for 3. So every time I think of Juan Soto, I sometimes get a little speechless because I'm so happy the fact that he's here. But I guess just with Mathias, just kind of, his performance over this road trip, not only in LA, but also in Colorado. But just kind of go through with me Sort of, is this the time for Soto to break out? Because he was doing it before, but it seems to have solidified itself more on this road trip. Give me your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think that we're starting to see sort of his confidence come back too. You're starting to see him shuffle a little more, which is big. Everyone was wondering, where's the Soto shuffle gone? I think it's sort of started to come back. And yeah, this road trip again, I mean, he has an 1179 OPS in June. So he's definitely clicking right now. He went 8 for 24 with 11 walks on this road trip. So he's leading the majors in walks, which is great. And yeah, you're starting to see him take better at bats, I think. I think for a while, and it still comes up here and there. He was a little in between on his swing decisions, being a little too selective, I felt like. Now you're starting to see him attack earlier in counts, not waiting to fall behind 0-2. And he's still in plenty of 2-strike counts, but he's grinding out his at-bats. I know everyone was hitting the panic button during that game against the Red Sox where he took the first 7 pitches he saw and struck out twice. But it is Juan Soto. I mean, if you wouldn't believe it, actually, his walk rate is up compared to last year. His average exit velocity is also up compared to last year. I'd like to see the ground balls come down more still, but yeah, I think he's making better contact. He's hitting the ball in the air a little bit more. He's not striking out much still. He's still walking more than he strikes out. And it's interesting because remember, Lindor was going through a slump too, and so was Soto, and so was Alonso, and now all three of them are starting to click again. So now that those three are hitting, and with Nimmo starting to come alive too, that 1-4 in the lineup is really, really just allowing this offense to reach its full potential.
The amount of times I've seen graphics of him being the unluckiest hitter,
He still is,
which is crazy because obviously the production's taken a tick up. You knew it was coming eventually. That's obviously Mets fans are going to be optimistic, most of them at least, when it comes to stuff like that. But I mean, our social team I think it was this morning, showed a graphic. And the three big guns, Lindor, Alonso, and Soto, are all hitting above 320 with an OPS over 1,000. All three of them in their last 10. So the big three are showing up. I think the Lindor Nimmo, tandem as the 1-2 has really shake things up well because Soto hitting that 3-hole has kind of changed things for him. This is what we expected. It's obviously really cool to see him doing the shuffle a little bit more. He's made some good plays defensively, which is also, something that was really talked about in the offseason, that he was going to struggle out there. I think he's had some good plays. Obviously, maybe the advanced analytics don't say that, but this is the guy we expected him to be. And when the offense is clicking like it is right now, it's really fun to watch. So Soto's been a real big part of that in recent stretch, and I don't expect anything less out of him.
Right. And one of the things too, you mentioned the outfield. I forget where it might have been the Athletic. I forgot who reported this exactly, but it was reported that Soto went to the pitching lab and tried to correct whatever arm, sort of issues that he had. And obviously you can see that sort of kind of coming through because he definitely looks a lot cleaner when it comes to picking up balls and throwing them in. You can tell he's working hard on his game. And one of the things that fascinates me about Soto is it's just his vision at the plate. Even when he was struggling, you can see how well he can identify the plate in front of him. And I think just that alone has not only bolstered this team, but honestly, you want to talk about, people say that Juan Soto was going to get a boost from Pete Alonso. Pete Alonso's getting a boost from Juan Soto because you can't make a mistake to either one. If Lindor can get you, Nimmo can definitely get you, and Soto can definitely get you. So then you kind of have to decide. You have people intentionally walking Juan Soto to get to Pete Alonso. So what does that say? Just the fact that he's there is giving the Mets this huge amount of depth and respect to many pitchers who don't want to have to deal with that, but they have to, And one of the things that I like, and this, and I'm gonna sound like a boomer saying this because Keith mentions this all the time, but I think it's true. It's always kind of been sort of this general adage that Keith likes to repeat. Juan Soto was going the other way a lot on pitches, and that was very evident in Colorado. Now, why do I say that? Because if you're at the plate, right, as a baseball player, Now, anyone who's watching this has played baseball. I want to correct me if I'm wrong because everybody's going to have a different collective experience. But just from what I've been able to see watching baseball, writing about baseball over the years, is that Keith is right. When a player goes the other way, that's usually because they generally tend to have a better view of the plate because most of the time you want to pull and hit the ball 400 feet. Everybody loves the home run to right field if you're a left-handed batter, or home run to left field if you're a right-handed batter, because it's very satisfying. If you've done it, you know what I'm talking about. But if you're able to utilize all of the field, that means you have better coverage of the plate. One of the things that we sort of were kind of upset about with Soto was the fact that he was not only taking a lot of pitches being too methodical in terms of pitch selection, but also just kind of not utilizing the other side of the field. What's Juan Soto been good at all this time in his career is using the other side of the field. I can't count how many times I watched Mets Nationals games, and you guys can attest to this too. I know this. Watching Juan Soto hit balls out to left field at Citi Field
all the time
because because he knows how to cover the plate. So now that, even though there were only singles, and I think Soto's last RBI was in the Dodgers series, but even though there were only singles, it's still a sign of improvement. Now, like you guys said, the ground balls can kind of lessen a little bit. He kind of needs to put a little bit more under the ball. But there was a good sign, though. While, we were at the game, we had a little bit of a MMO meetup in the homestand when Colorado played on that Saturday. While some of us were up in the concourse, up in our seats, Juan Soto hit a home run the opposite way out to left center field pretty much. That's a good sign. So it's nice to see that carry over into this Colorado series and LA series, and hopefully in this upcoming series against the Nationals and the Rays, and obviously hopefully for the whole season. So I guess we'll touch on one more player. So one of the players that I feel that has been subject to a lot of scrutiny, and some of it deservedly so because it's a bit of a wild card, but you don't want to pile on, is Jeff McNeil. And now, Jeff McNeil is sort of this kind of question mark that you don't really know what the Mets are going to do with it because they've tried to trade him. They've tried to find a way to shoehorn him in to different positions. But now it finally seems like we're getting a little bit of that old 2022, 2019 Jeff McNeil back. Jeff McNeil had a phenomenal road trip, especially hitting those 2 home runs in Colorado, or 3 home runs in the series, really, against the Rockies. His swing looks way more fluid. He has a better approach at the plate. Doesn't seem like he's flailing. One of the things that he's done really well in the past is basically draw a lot of good at bats, and that's what he's done if he doesn't swing at the first pitch. So I guess, Christian, just your thoughts on McNeil, his performance over the road trip, and do you see this really becoming a trend? And have we seen the return of, I guess, happy Jeff and consistent Jeff, I'll add?
I think so. I'm looking at my Twitter right now. I'll just shout out Just Baseball because they posted this afternoon. Since the All-Star break of last season, in 76 games, he's hitting 275, 13 home runs, a slug over 540, an OPS over 900. This is in 76 games since he, changed his approach after a really bad first half last year. Hitting for a lot of power. I know earlier on in his career when he kind of went more focused on power, it didn't really work out well. The average really took a dip. I just think the quality of bats weren't at the same level that year. This time around, it's a little bit different. Actually, really a lot different in my mind. And I think when you look at a sample size like that, 76 games, I think it's possible that this is at least the new version of him temporarily. And as you mentioned on the top of talking McNeil, a lot of fans were saying, is this time to trade him? Should we give the full reins to Luis Angel Acuna? Not yet, at least. And McNeil is here to stay. The versatility really helps. I mean, he's doing his best out in center field, giving that, just a different option out there with Jose Siri out. I think he's, a really valuable piece to this team. And as you mentioned, the at-bats have been a lot better, not just, hitting for more power, but just the quality of at-bats have been so much better. So I think this is the new version of him. I don't think this is just a purple patch, a couple good weeks, a couple good months. I think this is more of what we're, going to see for the rest of the season.
Yeah, no, I really liked his approach in the second half last year when he was starting to just swing hard, not forget just trying to make contact, hit singles all the time, which is fine. You can hit singles all you want, but when you're batting 230 like he was in the first half last year, you start to question some things. And I think in the second half, you start to see it come around. OPS over 900 in the second half before he got hurt. And this year, I mean, I'm just looking at his Baseball Savant page. He's hitting the ball in the air more. 32% fly ball rate, 54% pulled fly ball rate, which is a huge improvement over years past. So I think, I'm not saying he necessarily has to try to hit home runs, but I do like that he's swinging harder and he's getting results. I mean, 888 OPS now, big series in Colorado, like you were saying, 5 for 12 with 3 homers and 5 RBIs. And he's creating a good problem for this team. It's never a bad thing when you have too many good players. And I think McNeil, the fan base was really starting to pile on him, especially after his rough first half last year. And, this year he kind of got off to a slow start. And, his first game, he kind of misplayed a ball that lost them the game. But overall, I mean, McNeil's been fine. He's been basically a combination, I'd say, of 2019 and 2022. And, I like that he has added the versatility of playing center field, because we knew he could play the corner outfield positions. We knew he could play second. We knew he could play a little bit of third. But now that he can play center, if they want to go with an offense first lineup, they can put him in center and sit Taylor, or, you could DH him. They've had a sort of a revolving door at DH. And with Mark Vientos being hurt right now, it gives them more options. You can put him in center. You can put Mauricio at second, Beatty at third, or any sort of combination. So he's really just been an overall pretty valuable player this year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he sort of reminds me, and I'm going to age myself here saying this, he sort of reminds me of a better hitting Joe McEwing. Okay, for all the heads out there who remembered exactly what Swiss Army knife Joe McEwing was, because the thing about McEwing was you could insert him everywhere in the lineup, but it didn't matter what it was. You could put McEwing in left, you could put him at short, you could put him at first. He played every catcher except pitcher, and he might have even, to my memory, maybe have pitched in a blowout. I don't know. That might not have been a big thing back in the day. But also the thing I like about McNeil too is that not only is his bat gotten a lot better, but you guys alluded to him being, kind of this versatile player in the outfield, but also his infield defense has shot up tremendously. When he plays second base, he seems a little bit more agile in terms of going to balls over to the middle and to his left. He's made a couple of really good plays out in the infield this year to kind of save a couple of runs. And, for someone who wasn't a center fielder, naturally, even by trade, because obviously left field, center field, right field are all different positions, perspective wise, he's done very well. And he looks very competent and adept in his tracking of fly balls, in taking the right routes to balls. Yeah, he'll look a bit goofy at times because it's not his natural position. But then again, I can't fault the guy. But he's really been able to be sort of a useful asset. He's essentially what we wanted to see from JD Davis when he was here, because that's ultimately what we were looking for, someone who had the bat, who could play more than one position. They tried it out with Dom Smith, didn't work. Tried it out with JD Davis, it didn't work. They tried it out with Jeff McNeil, and it worked. And one of the things too that I'll mention, you talk about his change of approach last year. If I remember correctly, I think you basically touched on it. He said that, hey, just hit the ball hard. And to think that you have to tell that to a major leaguer is crazy in itself, but it's also not too far-fetched, because hitting can be very fickle, and you want to be, everybody wants to be like Tony Gwynn and hit the ball surgically into different parts of the field, but sometimes not everybody's built for that. So I think, what ended up changing was he stopped trying to be the slap hitter. He's not Luis Ariz, okay? You're bigger and you're stronger than that, Jeff. Instead, he just sees the ball. It's see ball, hit ball, ball goes far. And sometimes that works for some people. So it's nice to see that McNeil has definitely improved in that point. So last thing. So pitching staff. Okay. I'm not trying to throw you guys a curveball, no pun intended. But so clearly we've seen just the results continuing to come out from not only the pitching lab, but the pitching philosophies shown by Jeremy Hefner and David Stearns in the organization. we mentioned Paul Blackburn, who had a solid start against the Dodgers on Monday, who everybody thought was going to get shelled, but he looked good on his first game coming back from his injury. And then obviously Tyler McGill seems to have kind of stopped the bleeding after being really good in April. Had a bit of a rough May, but has kind of stopped that in a sense. Griffin Canning, I mean, you could begin to make, if you want, Cy Young predictions. Obviously, Kodai Senga has been nothing short of phenomenal. David Peterson, who knew getting surgery on your hip and changing your mechanics a little bit would work. So I guess just overall, your thoughts, Christian, I'll start with you on this. Your overall thoughts on the pitching staff and also let me not forget Clay Holmes, Mr. Oh, he's not gonna do well as a starter. Yeah. Oh, I'm a Yankee fan. Oh, he's gonna do terrible. No, he's one of our pitchers. So I guess Christian, just kind of real quick, just kind of go into your thoughts on the pitching staff and can they sustain this?
I think so. Not to mention that Sean Manaea and Frankie Montas are on their way back. Especially Manaea. Montas is kind of a wild card, and we kind of knew that going into the season. Manaea was their second, maybe their best starter last season, along with Luis Severino. So it's going to get deeper. Again, as we mentioned, I think with the positions, Mathias said earlier, it's a good problem to have. You have all these different options. Blackburn's now back. You're going to get Manaea and Montas back. So there's a lot of people for only a certain amount of spots. I'm interested to see how they handle that in terms of who gets optioned, who goes maybe into long relief. But I think the focus is Senga for me. I think he should be getting more looks as a Cy Young winner. He should be in that conversation for me because, the ERA is at a 1.59. The next highest or next lowest is 1.88 at Paul Skeens. So we'll see where he shakes out come the end of the season. But Kodai Senga, having a frontline ace type of guy is going to be really important come the postseason. And after missing all of last season, I think he's reminded people that he is that type of pitcher. He is an ace. He is a number one. So I think that's my huge, huge takeaway from the pitching staff so far.
Yeah, really. I look at this pitching staff. The improvement across the board, really. Even look, Tyler McGill is the one that literally everyone in the fan base just piles on. Every time he has a bad outing, they're all, in the comments section, just, attacking Tyler McGill. Like, McGill goes out there and will give you decent starts, I understand, take that start against the Dodgers on Monday. He allowed on Tuesday, he allowed 4 runs in the first inning and then settled in. He gave him 6 innings, on a day where the bullpen was beat up. So, he's actually leading the pitching staff in strikeouts. By far has the highest strikeout rate in the majors. If I'm going to nitpick one thing from the starting rotation, I'd like to see the walks come down a bit.
Yeah.
3 starters with a walk per 9 over 4. I'm not a huge fan of walking guys. It's one of my pet peeves, I would say. But they're keeping the ball in the yard. I know Clay Holmes has run into a little bit of a home run problem lately, but still overall, he's a sinker baller. He gets the ground balls. And for the most part, when they're allowing home runs, it's not with men on base. So it's definitely encouraging. Griffin Canning, though, is probably my most improved player. If I were to give out an award, he led the AL in earned runs allowed last year, and everyone was wondering, he'll just be a reliever maybe. Like, I can't believe we have to put him in the rotation. He's the 3rd starter entering the season, but his ERA is down to 2.9. He bounced back from his one bad outing against the White Sox with, shutting down one of the best lineups in baseball. So the 1-5 is great. Who knows what they're going to do with Montas and Manaea coming back, in addition to having Blackburn now shifted to the bullpen. And speaking of which, the bullpen has been excellent. Really, there isn't much to complain about this entire pitching staff. So even if they do regress a little bit, you've basically gotten the best. You've gotten more than you could have asked for out of this entire staff.
Right. And I feel like at this point, whatever David Stearns tends to do, I feel like at this point we should give him the benefit of the doubt because obviously it worked with Manaea last year. It worked with Severino. It definitely worked on Peterson. It's working on McGill. And, it's definitely going to work on some of the kids who are coming up who have a lot more, stuff when it comes to just pitches and all that. So I really think that this is something that's going to really do a lot of good for this team. And look, and one last point. You look at the way how the pitching staff has been constructed with all these players who haven't really broke the bank. You break the bank on the hitters, you break the bank on Soto, you break it on Lindor, you break it on Alonso. But people were chiding the Mets for not going after Blake Snell or Corbin Burns this offseason. But now, look, you don't want to wish injury on anybody, of course not. But Corbin Burns has to take a Tommy John surgery, who frankly was a little bit overpaid by the Diamondbacks. And Blake Snell, has he even gotten more than 6 starts to 7 starts this year?
He has 2 starts.
Yeah,
There you
he's
go.
dealing with a significant shoulder injury.
Right.
It's-
So
Yeah.
so people chide the Mets, even though the experiment worked last year. They chided them again this year, and now it's even better than it was before. I think we have to give them the benefit of the doubt, especially the pitching lab and David Stearns and Jeremy Hefner, who've done a phenomenal job, and also Carlos Mendoza too. He knows how to kind of handle things properly. And my final gripe, and we'll end with this. Like you, I don't like the walks, and another thing is I want them to go more than 6 innings.
Yeah,
That's
good
my
point.
only.
Yeah,
That's my
they've been
only
getting
real
better,
gripe.
but yeah.
They have, and thankfully, I think Peterson went 7 the other day, which was nice to see. And I'm trying to remember who else did, but most of the guys really stop at 6. They throw a lot of pitches because a lot of the walks. But thankfully, the bullpen has not been nothing but solid. But that'll be another topic for another episode. Anyways, thank you, Mathias. Thank you, Christian, for taking the time out to join me here on MMO Weekly, presented by Chitty Cheesesteaks. And we'll be back soon enough with another episode. And enjoy the rest of the week of games. Hopefully, they take care of business against Washington in the race. And don't forget, take a look at the website. Lots of great content on MMO through all of our social media platforms and articles and whatnot. Again, we're presented by Chitty Cheesesteaks because we can't get enough sponsors on here. we want to get their name out as much as possible. Chitty Cheesesteaks, Chitty Cheesesteaks. And to end it, let's go Mets.